Just enthusiasm and the energy that she had that really rubbed off on me for causes.
Princess and slipped a velvet box across the table. Inside, Diana's legendary Spencer tiara. She's ready and whispered, but who could possibly be worthy of such a crown? Join us as we discover the real reason behind Anne's powerful gesture and why she was called the Chosen One, the Princess Royal's unprecedented choice. The morning light filtered through Buckingham Palace windows as Princess and made a decision that would shake the very foundations of royal protocol. For 70 years, she had worn the title of Princess Royal with unwavering dedication. Now, at this crossroad of history, she saw something in young Princess Charlotte that reminded her of someone else entirely. Someone who had worn diamonds and carried burdens. Someone who had transformed the monarchy forever. Could it be that Anne saw Diana's spirit burning bright in Charlotte's eyes? The similarities were becoming impossible to ignore. That same confident stride, that same fearless gaze when meeting world leaders, that same gentle touch when comforting a crying child at a public engagement. But this wasn't just about resemblance. This was about revolution. You see, the Princess Royal title isn't simply passed down like a family heirloom. It's earned through decades of service, bestowed only upon the monarch's eldest daughter, and technically it's held for life. Yet here was Anne breaking centuries of tradition, planning for a future where Charlotte would carry the sacred responsibility. What drove Anne to make such an extraordinary choice? Perhaps it was watching Charlotte at the Platinum Jubilee, standing tall beside her great-grandmother, never fidgeting despite the hours of ceremony. Or maybe it was that moment at Wimbledon when Charlotte instinctively helped an elderly guest who had stumbled. These weren't rehearsed royal moments. They were glimpses of genuine character. Do you think Princess Anne is right to break tradition for Charlotte? Share your thoughts below. But what happened next behind palace doors left even the Queen's closest advisors speechless. The secret summit that changed everything. The private dining room at Windsor Castle had witnessed countless historic moments. But on that autumn evening, something unprecedented unfolded. Princess Anne had requested this meeting months in advance. Just her, William, Catherine, and a decision that would alter Charlotte's destiny forever. The Spencer tiara sat between them on the mahogany table. Its diamonds caught the candlelight, casting rainbow shadows across the room. 25 carats of history. Diana's wedding crown. The symbol of a love story that captivated the world and ended in heartbreak. William's hand trembled slightly as he touched the velvet case. "She wore this the day she married my father," he said quietly. His voice carried the weight of memory. "I was too young to understand then, but I remember thinking she looked like a fairy tale princess." Catherine reached for his hand under the table, a gesture of support that spoke volumes, and leaned forward, her eyes intense with purpose. "Charlotte has something special, William. The same spark Diana had, the same ability to connect with people's hearts." The room fell silent. Outside, autumn wind rattled the ancient windows. "But she's only 9, Catherine finally whispered, her maternal instinct warring with royal duty. "Exactly why we must start preparing her now," Anne replied. Her tone was gentle but firm, not to burden her, but to give her the tools she'll need. William stood and walked to the window. Below, the castle grounds stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, Charlotte was probably practicing her ballet or reading about horses. Still a child, still innocent. "What if she doesn't want this?" he asked. Anne's response would echo through royal history. "Then we'll have raised her with something more valuable than any tiara, the freedom to choose." But that wasn't the most shocking revelation of the evening. Anne pulled out a second document. Official palace stationery, the royal seal prominent at the top. "I've already spoken to His Majesty," she said. "When the time comes when I'm no longer here, he's agreed to consider Charlotte for Princess Royal." Implications hit like thunder. This wasn't just about a tiara. This was about rewriting the future of the monarchy itself. The night Charlotte changed everything. 3 weeks after that secret summit, Something happened that would transform the Wales family forever. It was past Charlotte's bedtime. The nursery at Kensington Palace was dimly lit, shadows dancing from her unicorn nightlight. William had just returned from a 2-day royal tour. He'd missed her school play. Again, Charlotte sat up in bed as he entered. Her eyes, so like Diana's, held an emotion that made William's heart stop. "Daddy." Her voice was small, uncertain. He sat on the edge of her bed, still in his formal suit. "I'm sorry I missed your play, darling. How was it?" She looked down at her hands. Lucy's dad came, and Oliver's, and Emma's dad even flew back from Dubai. The words hung between them like an accusation. William felt something crack inside his chest. How many bedtimes had he missed? How many school plays? How many small moments that would never come again? "Charlotte, do you love being Prince more than being Daddy?" The question destroyed him, because hidden within those innocent words was a truth he'd been avoiding. The same truth Diana had faced. The impossible balance between crown and family. Charlotte's bottom lip trembled. "Sometimes I wish we were normal. Then you'd be home for dinner." William pulled her into his arms. She smelled of lavender bath soap and innocence. "Oh, my darling girl, being your daddy is the most important job I'll ever have." For the first and only time, the Princess Royal's legendary composure shattered, and kept that drawing in her desk drawer for 30 years, right next to her father's final letter. This was the woman who had chosen Charlotte, not from sentiment, but from recognition. She saw in her great niece the same quiet strength that had sustained her through decades of being the monarchy's workhorse, the same ability to find joy in duty, the same steel spine wrapped in silk gloves. But here's what made him different from every other royal mentor. She understood the cost. Her own children had struggled with royal life. Peter and Zara had found freedom in stepping back, and had refused them titles at birth, a decision that seemed radical then, prophetic now. She'd watched her first marriage crumble under the pressure, endured vicious tabloid attacks, sacrificed normalcy on the altar of duty, which is why her mentorship of Charlotte was so carefully calibrated, teaching her not just to endure, but to thrive, not just to serve, but to love the service. During one dawn riding lesson, Charlotte asked a question that stopped him cold. "Why do you work so hard when no one's watching?" And dismounted and knelt to meet her great niece's eyes. "Because that's when it counts the most, darling. What we do when no one's watching, that's who we really are." The trick, and told Charlotte as they cooled down the horses, is to remember that the crown serves the people, not the other way around. Charlotte, only 9, had nodded solemnly, then asked if they could jump the bigger fence, and had smiled, fearless, like another princess she'd known. But Charlotte had something Diana never had. A mentor who'd already paid the price and lived to teach the lesson. Princess Charlotte. Future taking shape. Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Even her name carried the weight of legacy. At 9 years old, she navigated public life with startling composure. But it was the moments between the moments that revealed her true character. At a Wimbledon match, while cameras focused on the royals and box, Charlotte noticed a young girl in a wheelchair struggling to see. Without prompting, she asked security if the girl could be moved to a better spot. During a palace garden party, she spent 20 minutes with an elderly veteran, listening to his stories about serving with her great-grandfather. She remembered his name months later, sending him a Christmas card. These weren't performed gestures. They were instincts. Her teachers at Thomas's Battersea spoke carefully, bound by privacy agreements. But one observation leaked through. She has an unusual ability to make every child feel seen. During playground disputes, others naturally turned to her. Leadership blooming naturally, without forcing. But Charlotte was still a child. She loved Taylor Swift and horse riding. She fought with George over the TV remote. She negotiated fiercely for later bedtimes. The balance was delicate. Catherine monitored it constantly, adjusting when royal duties overshadowed childhood joys. She needs to know she has choices, Catherine told a friend, that her worth isn't tied to title. Yet Charlotte seemed drawn to the very duties others fled from during the Platinum Jubilee, while other children fidgeted. She stood perfectly still for hours, not from fear or training, but from understanding. Why didn't you complain? William asked her afterward. Because great-granny needed me to be strong, she replied simply. In that moment, William saw Diana's compassion and discipline and something uniquely Charlotte's own. The future of the monarchy stood 4 feet tall in patent leather shoes, and she was ready for whatever came next. The palace walls began to crack. The British press smelled blood in the water immediately. William's diary disaster screamed the Daily Mail. Future king cancels duties for family time, declared the Telegraph. But it was Piers Morgan's commentary that cut deepest. Seems the Prince of Wales had forgotten that duty comes before personal desires. His grandmother never missed an engagement for a school play. The palace communication team went into overdrive, carefully worded statements about diary adjustments and long-standing commitments. But the public had noticed something else entirely. At Charlotte's school sports day, there was William, cheering loudly as she won the relay race. At the local pizza restaurant, security discreetly stationed outside while the Wales family enjoyed a normal Saturday lunch. The photographs were revealing. Charlotte's hand constantly in her father's. Her face turned up to him with absolute adoration. The prince, who had been slowly disappearing behind duty, had remembered how to be a dad. Royal commentator Robert Jobson observed something profound. What we're witnessing isn't a crisis, it's a correction. William is choosing not to repeat the mistakes of previous generations. But not everyone saw it that way. At a state banquet, a senior courtier was overheard muttering about American influences and emotional nonsense. The old guard was rattled. This wasn't how things were done. Then came the television interview that changed public opinion overnight. A young mother in Birmingham, struggling with work-life balance, was asked about William's choices. Her response went viral. He's showing our kids that daddies can choose family too. That love matters more than any job, even if that job comes with crown. Social media exploded with support. Hashtag Daddy William began trending globally. Parents shared their own stories of missing precious moments for work. Meanwhile, in California, another branch of the family watched with interest. Sources close to the Sussexes reported that Harry had called his brother. The conversation, whatever was said, lasted 3 hours. Meghan was reportedly heard saying, "Maybe the monarchy can change after all." But the real test came at the state opening of Parliament. Would William maintain his new boundaries, or would duty pull him back? The answer surprised everyone. William attended, fulfilling his constitutional role. But he left immediately after, racing back for Charlotte's bedtime story. The message was clear. Duty and love weren't mutually exclusive. They could coexist. Crown's New Dawn. Christmas at Sandringham, 2024. The photographers capture a moment that would define the monarchy's future. Princess and Princess Charlotte, walking side by side to church. Anne's hand resting gently on Charlotte's shoulder. Charlotte looking up at her great-aunt with absolute trust. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Behind them, William and Catherine watched with knowing smiles. The decision had been made. Not officially, not publicly, but within the family. The path was clear. Charlotte would be prepared. Not pushed, but prepared. Already, the changes were visible. At royal engagements, and had begun including Charlotte in ways that raised Crown's New Dawn. Christmas at Sandringham, 2024. The photographers capture a moment that would define the monarchy's future. Princess and Princess Charlotte, walking side by side to church. Anne's hand resting gently on Charlotte's shoulder. Charlotte looking up at her great-aunt with absolute trust. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Behind them, William and Catherine watched with knowing smiles. The decision had been made. Not officially, not publicly, But within the family, the path was clear. Charlotte would be prepared. Not pushed, but prepared. Already, the changes were visible at royal engagements and had begun including Charlotte in ways that raised eyebrows, teaching her the subtle art of royal walkabouts, the correct way to accept flowers, how to make every person feel like the only person in the room. But more importantly, she was teaching her why it mattered. During a visit to a children's hospital, Charlotte watched and spent an hour with a terminally ill child. No cameras, no publicity, just presence. Why do we stay so long? Charlotte asked in the car afterward, because that little boy will remember this day forever, and replied, and his parents will have a happy memory among the sad ones. That's why we do this, Charlotte, not for glory, for them. Charlotte nodded, processing this truth. Meanwhile, the Spencer Tiara remained in the vault, waiting. William had made one decision clear. It wouldn't be presented until Charlotte was 18. Old enough to understand its weight, old enough to choose whether to accept it. But the royal watchers had noticed other signs. Charlotte's prominence at state occasions, her positioning in official photographs, always at Anne's right hand, always learning. For the first and only time, the Princess Royal's legendary composure shattered, and kept that drawing in her desk drawer for 30 years. Right next to her father's final letter. This was the woman who had chosen Charlotte, not from sentiment, but from recognition. She saw in her great niece the same quiet strength that had sustained her through decades of being the monarchy's workhorse, the same ability to find joy in duty, the same steel spine wrapped in silk gloves. But here's what made Anne different from every other royal mentor. She understood the cost. Her own children had struggled with royal life. Peter and Zara had found freedom in stepping back, and had refused them titles at birth, a decision that seemed radical then, prophetic now. She'd watched her first marriage crumble under the pressure, endured vicious tabloid attacks, sacrificed normalcy on the altar of duty, which is why her mentorship of Charlotte was so carefully calibrated, teaching her not just to endure, but to thrive, not just to serve, but to love the service. During one dawn writing lesson, Charlotte asked a question that stopped him cold. Why do you work so hard when no one's watching? And dismounted and knelt to meet her great niece's eyes. Because that's when it counts the most. Darling, what we do when no one's watching, that's who we really are. The trick, Anne told Charlotte as they cooled down the horses, is to remember that the crown serves the people, not the other way around. Charlotte, only 9, had nodded solemnly, then asked if they could jump the bigger fence, and had smiled, fearless. Even King Charles had begun including Charlotte in ways that suggested preparation. During his birthday celebration, she was given the honor of presenting him with the first slice of cake, a small gesture that carried enormous significance in the choreographed world of royal protocol. She has the gift, a senior courtier observed, that indefinable quality that makes people want to love the monarchy, not fear it, not resent it, love it. But perhaps the most telling sign came from an unexpected source. In California, Prince Harry had been asked about Charlotte during a charity event. His response was revealing. She's going to be exactly what the monarchy needs. Someone who understands that love and duty can coexist. I'm proud of my niece. No bitterness, no jealousy, just recognition that Charlotte represented hope for an institution that had broken so many. The monarchy was evolving, slowly, carefully, but undeniably. And at the center of it all, a 9-year-old girl who carried herself like a future queen, but still insisted on bedtime stories about unicorns. The balance between magic and duty, between tradition and progress, between the crown's weight and childhood's freedom. Charlotte was living proof that all these things could exist in harmony. The Spencer Tiara sits in the Tower of London, waiting, silent, carrying the dreams and tears of a princess who never got to see her daughter grow up. Soon, it may crown a new generation, a princess who embodies Diana's compassion and Anne's strength, a future that honors the past while writing its own story. But here's the question that keeps the palace awake at night. What would Diana think? Watching her granddaughter prepare to carry forward a legacy of service she herself struggled to bear. Would she see hope in Charlotte's steady gaze? Pride in William's newfound balance? Joy in a monarchy learning to bend without breaking? Perhaps somewhere, in the space between earth and eternity, she's smiling, knowing that her sacrifice wasn't in vain. That love had won in the end. If you found this story as moving as we did, don't miss our deep dive into the secret letters Diana left for her son. Revelations will change everything you thought you knew about the people's princess.